Welcome to the deep dive, where we crack open complex ideas and really try to pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge for you. Today, we're embarking on a truly fascinating journey. We want to understand something really fundamental, how culture profoundly shapes who we become. And we'll be focusing on the groundbreaking work of an anthropologist named Leela Dube. She really changed how we think about gender. Okay, let's unpack this. So Leela Dube, she lived from 1923 to 2012, and she was a real trailblazer. She basically pulled women's experiences, from the sidelines and put them right center stage in the study of human societies, which is anthropology, her core idea. That what we think of as gender, like what it means to be a man or a woman, isn't something we're just born with. It's something society actively builds through everyday life. Our deep dive today is going to explore two big areas from her research. First, we'll look at her incredible insights into the lives of Hindi girls in a system called patrilineal India. That just means family lines are traced through the father. And second, we'll dive into her really surprising study of this unique community in the Laccadive Islands. There, a social system centered on women kind of coexists with Islam, a religion that typically emphasizes male roles. It's quite something.
What's fascinating here, I think, is that Leela Dube's work isn't just about, facts and figures. It really forces you, the listener, to ask a fundamental question. How do societies actually construct gender? And what are the deep, lasting effects of this construction on people, especially on girls and women? It really encourages us to think critically about beliefs that feel so natural, so ingrained, we hardly ever question them.
That's a great way to put it. And Leela Dube herself felt that her own experience, her gendered life, as she called it, just living as a woman in society, made her uniquely aware of issues. Issues that the mostly male academic world at the time often completely missed. She was absolutely crucial in challenging what's known as anthropology's androcentric bias.
Right, androcentric bias.
Think of it like this. For a long time, the field mostly looked at the world from a male point of view, basically ignore or just downplaying how important women were in shaping cultures.
Exactly. Her main focus areas were kinship studies. How families and relationships are organized and what became known as the anthropology of women. Her impact was actually pretty significant. She played a key role in the Towards Equality report for the Committee on Status of Women in India back in 1974. This report was a big deal, discussed in Parliament, and really brought women's studies to national attention. She also led a panel looking into the declining sex ratio in India, which is that worrying imbalance between male and female births.
And her early fieldwork, that must have been foundational. She worked with the Gond community, right? An indigenous group.
Yes, and that gave her incredible firsthand understanding.
She really dug into gender differences there, like how much freedom women had, the challenges they faced.
And interestingly, the clever strategies women use in circumventing the restrictive system. She even studied their folk songs.
Folk songs, what did they reveal?
Well, they weren't shy. They expressed sexuality, desire, passion, things often hidden. It was this deep immersion, this listening, that really fueled her drive to understand these gender disparities. It wasn't just gender relations. She looked at broader family relationships, even how Ghan society viewed people based on their usefulness or labor as they got older.
So when we talk about anthropology having an androcentric bias, what exactly does that mean in practice? And why was it so vital for someone like Leela Dube to push back against that?
Well, imagine trying to understand how a whole team works, right?
Yeah.
But you only ever talk to half the players, let's say, just the guys. An androcentric bias means most of the research, the theories, the questions being asked, they're centered around men's experiences and viewpoints. This often means women's lives, their contributions, their unique challenges. They're either just overlooked or seen as, less important, sort of secondary. So Dube's challenge was vital because it was like saying, hey, wait a minute, we're only getting half the story here. By bringing women's experiences into focus, she made anthropology much more accurate, much more complete in understanding human societies. Without her, our picture of culture would be really, really lopsided.
That makes perfect sense, like forcing the field to look in the mirror. Okay, so turning to how she applied this critical lens, what's one of the first big things she uncovered about how gender is actually built in Hindu society? You mentioned her essay on the construction of gender.
Right. Her main discovery there is how everyday life, all the rituals, the ceremonies, the sayings, the songs, the cultural practices, how all these things work together to essentially produce women as gendered subjects.
Yeah.
It's not just that girls are born female. It's about how society actively shapes them into what it means to be female within that specific cultural context.
And a huge part of that shaping comes from family structures, kinship and caste.
Exactly. Kinship, or family relationships, provides the very organizing principles, the rules for family ideology. Understanding this is absolutely key to seeing how girls are socialized and why women might be, well, devalued within patrilineal families. And here's a crucial point Dube makes. Women's bodies and their sexuality become central to maintaining boundaries between different social groups or castes. It's called boundary maintenance.
Boundary maintenance, how does that work?
Well, think about controlling who marries whom. That's a way to keep caste lines distinct. So strict control over women's choices, especially around marriage and sexuality, becomes a way to uphold the entire social order. So kinship and caste together really create the framework that defines social relationships for women and shapes them as these gendered subjects.
And one of the most powerful ways these ideas get passed down is through metaphors, right? Like that striking seed and earth metaphor you mentioned.
Oh, absolutely. This metaphor is deeply, deeply embedded. It teaches that the child inherently belongs to the father. He provides the seed, the essence, which gives the child its identity. The mother, on the other hand, she's like the field or the earth. She receives the seed and nourishes it. So she has moral rights, sure, but not material ownership of the child in the same way.
Wow.
And this idea isn't just some old story. It's become part of everyday language. Dube argues it's a fundamental reason for this secondary status given to women, because they're seen as these passive receptacles. She quotes, "Man provides the seed, the essence, while the woman provides the field which receives the seed and nourishes it. A child shares the father's blood."
So the bloodline comes from the father.
Precisely. And what's really significant is that this unequal arrangement is often presented as completely natural, like it's just the way things are supposed to be.
Think about that seed and earth metaphor for a second. How does it assign different value to male and female contributions? It might seem old-fashioned, but what's the underlying message about value? It's kind of surprising, isn't it?
It really is surprising because it essentially reinterprets biology through this very specific cultural lens. It places almost all the inherent essence and the ultimate ownership of the child onto the father. So the mother's contribution, while obviously essential for life, is culturally framed as secondary, as nurturing rather than originating identity. And that has real implications for how a woman's value is perceived.
And Dube found that girls absorb these messages about their differing value from a very, very young age. She gives some really powerful examples, like you might hear a maidservant looking at a baby girl and saying, "Oh, how wonderful it would have been if this was a boy."
Right, or parents who only have daughters being pitied, their future seen as bleak. There's even a Telugu saying that captures this perfectly. Bringing up a daughter is like watering a plant in another's courtyard.
Implying she'll belong to someone else eventually.
Exactly. The investment is seen as temporary for the birth family. And this preference isn't subtle. Women are often blessed to have a large number of sons and just one daughter. Many religious fasts, these vratas, are performed specifically to pray for sons.
But girls are loved too, right? It's not all negative.
Oh, absolutely. Girls are loved and valued in many ways. They might be praised for school achievements, or there's a Marathi saying that the father of a girl will never remain hungry because she helps so much with housework. But the underlying message, the constant drumbeat, is about their short-lived stay in their birth home.
That Oriya proverb comparing a daughter to ghee, that's harsh.
It is harsh. Both are vacuable, but both begin to stink, if not disposed of in time. It highlights the intense societal pressure to marry daughters off quickly. And that Telugu expression comparing a post-pubertal daughter to a boil on the chest, again, it emphasizes the anxiety around her, the urgency to see her settled.
And this unequal valuing even impacts practical things like education.
Yes. Dube found that daughters are often sent to less expensive, maybe regional language schools, while boys might go to the English medium schools.
Because the son's education is seen as an investment in the family's future, but the daughter's isn't, because she'll leave.
Pretty much.
Yes.
Her education benefits her future husband's family, not her birth family, in that patrilineal logic.
So, thinking about this, if you were a girl constantly getting these messages from early childhood, how might that shape how you see yourself, your own worth, your future possibilities, even before you really understand gender roles fully?
It would undoubtedly create a deep sense of impermanence, wouldn't it? A feeling that your true home, your ultimate purpose, lies somewhere else with another family. It must affect self-perception profoundly.
And Dube shows how rituals powerfully reinforce this exact idea, the girl's inevitable transfer from her birth home to her husband's. She points to festivals like Durga Puja in Bengal or Gauri Puja in Karnataka. The goddesses visit their birth homes for just a few days.
Symbolizing a married daughter's brief visits back home.
Exactly. And then at weddings, the farewell rituals sound incredibly dramatic, almost like a final severing.
They are very dramatic. In Bengal, the bride throws rice over her shoulder. That's to symbolically absolve herself of debt to her birth family. Another Bengali custom has her saying something like, "I have taken from you in handfuls of gold. I am giving back in handfuls of dust." It signifies the exchange is complete.
Wow. And in Oriya weddings, pouring rice into the mother's sari, signifying the relationship is broken forever.
Symbolically broken, yes. It marks that fundamental shift in belonging. The emotional weight is intense. Dube shares this heartbreaking mother's wail from central India. "My child, had you been a son, you would have lived with us. But now you are being sent out of the house like a corpse."
Goodness. That's powerful.
And wedding songs often echo this sadness. A Hindi belt song goes, "Oh, Father, you brought my brother up to be happy. You brought me up for shedding tears."
And because girls understand they're temporary members, they might even focus more on collecting their dowry for their new family.
Yes. Dube suggests they might feel no obligation to contribute towards their birth family's maintenance in the same way a son would. That Oriya proverb, mother and daughter go into the temple, each to pray for her own happiness, really captures this idea that their long-term interests eventually diverge.
Even childhood songs and lullabies prepare them for the separation. "Rock-a-bye, baby. The bridegroom will come soon and take you away."
Or, "Let us play, for I shall never play again when I go off to the stranger's house." It's embedded from the start.
And songs contrast the birth home with the in-laws' place.
Starkly. Dube mentions Bulabai songs. "The natal home is beautiful. There we can play to our heart's content. The in-laws' place is cruel. It stifles and kills." All these wedding rituals are like public performances, dramatizing this permanent transfer of the woman.
So let's pause on that. If your childhood was filled with songs and family rituals constantly telling you that your true home and future lay somewhere else, with strangers, how do you think that would impact your sense of belonging, your confidence, your dreams?
It would have to create a fundamental sense of uncertainty, wouldn't it? And likely influence life choices, always anticipating that eventual move, that need to adapt to a new place. It shapes your entire outlook. Now let's look at how Dube explains the construction of femininity before puberty. She talks about this idea of intrinsic purity for young girls. This purity is recognized, even honored in rituals. A little girl might carry auspicious water at a wedding to ward off evil.
Or act as the mother of a stone infant in a naming ceremony.
Yes, also to ward off evil is a common theme. This purity is widespread. There's the custom of worshiping and feeding virgin girls, the kanya, on special occasions like Navaratri. One girl might even represent the mother goddess herself.
So what's the significance of this pre-puberty phase?
Dube makes two key points. First, these roles are seen as essentially feminine, and they help build a girl's own consciousness of femininity from a young age. Second, this purity and the sort of privileged status it brings stand in really sharp contrast to what comes next, the postpubertal stage, which is often viewed as more dangerous or needing careful management.
Okay, so why do you think there's such a stark difference? Pre-puberty seen as pure, post-puberty as potentially dangerous. What does that tell us about the society's anxieties?
Well, the big shift is reproductive capacity, isn't it? Before puberty, a girl is seen largely as asexual, pure. After puberty, her emerging sexuality and fertility, while valued for procreation within marriage, also become a source of significant societal anxiety. They must be strictly controlled to protect family honor, maintain caste boundaries. It really reveals a deep cultural focus on regulating female sexuality to keep the social order intact.
Right, so the onset of puberty brings huge changes, often described euphemistically, like flowering or being ready.
Yes. And in South India, and parts of Maharashtra and Orissa, puberty is often marked by quite elaborate celebrations. These commonly feature a period of confinement or seclusion for several days, maybe in a dark room or a special hut built for the occasion.
Seclusion? Why?
It's partly symbolic of the transition, partly protective. Sometimes there's a belief a menstruating girl is vulnerable to negative influences, so seclusion keeps her safe. Ritual prayers, arti, are done to ward off evil. She's also given special nourishing foods, things like dry coconut milk, ghee, jaggery, sesame seeds, even meat or chicken soups in some communities.
To build her strength.
Exactly. To make up for blood loss, regulate cycles, strengthen reproductive organs for future fertility. The period usually ends with a ritual bath, new clothes, and a feast, which basically announces her new status to the community.
And symbolic gifts are important too, like the half sari from her uncle in Andhra Pradesh.
Yes, or acquiring a padar, the upper end of the sari in Marathi culture. These gifts clearly mark her transition into womanhood.
So the diet, the rituals, it's all about fertility and future marriage.
Primarily, yes. Strengthening her for reproduction, but also, crucially, Dube notes, to restrain the girl's sexuality. Even in cities today, these celebrations might be quieter, maybe hushed up if an older sister isn't married yet, but the underlying beliefs often persist. Green bangles, symbolizing fertility and good fortune, are still very common.
It makes you wonder, does all this intense focus on fertility and marriage actually increase a girl's sense of self-worth? Or does it feel more like being trapped, like losing her childhood freedom? What do you think?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's likely deeply ambivalent. It affirms her future role, which is highly valued, but simultaneously narrows her path and emphasizes control over her body.
Now, in North India, it's often handled differently, more quietly.
Generally, yes. First menstruation is often a more private affair within the home. There are observances related to menstrual pollution and advice for the girl to avoid certain foods or activities like jumping or rough games.
Why those restrictions?
Often explained as being for her own reproductive health, but also about keeping her less visible, less active, sort of hidden from the male gaze now that she's considered mature.
And Dube mentions a really extreme example from Nepal.
Yes, the severe seclusion in a gufa, a cave. Dube interprets this as symbolizing a complete transference of the daughter's nascent sexuality away from her natal group and to another patriline. It's a very stark ritualistic separation.
So puberty marks her capacity to reproduce, but not her authority over it.
Exactly. Dube calls it a critical stage where her vulnerability is at its peak. Her sexuality is fundamentally tied to her future as a wife and mother. Motherhood is framed as the highest achievement, and marriage is the essential gateway to that achievement.
And this preoccupation with marriage seems woven into everything. Blessings, special fasts, vratas, to pray for a good husband.
Like Shiva or Vishnu, yes. And specific festivals like Bulabai and Gangwar, where young girls participate, hoping for good husbands. The value placed on the married state is just immense.
A married woman with a living husband is Sabhagavati, or Suhagan, meaning fortunate, and Sumangali, auspicious.
Right, and their presence, their participation, is considered essential in all important ceremonies and rituals. They embody good fortune.
Which means unmarried women are often excluded.
They're often excluded from auspicious activities, yes. And Dube notes they can be made to feel that there is something wrong with them. Their status is ambiguous, unfulfilled, according to this cultural logic.
And the contrast is even more extreme for widows who are considered inauspicious.
Deeply inauspicious. People even avoid the word widow or talking about the husband's death directly, using euphemisms like saying her bangles increase instead of break.
But the rituals are stark breaking bangles, wiping off the kumkum mark, removing the wedding necklace.
These are powerful public symbols of her changed status, her loss of auspiciousness. There are often rules for widows about what clothes they can wear, what foods they can eat. Even associations like scissors or razors being linked to widowhood.
Flowers in the hair, symbolizing marriage, are denied.
Denied. Dube even mentions an Iyer Brahmin ritual where a married woman, a Sumangali, has to clench turmeric to protect herself from the perceived misfortune radiating from a newly widowed woman.
So, thinking about this again, when a woman's entire value, her identity, her social standing, is so intensely tied to her marital status and whether her husband is alive, what does that imply for her personal agency, her ability to make her own choices?
It implies a profound limitation on personal agency, doesn't it? Her worth becomes almost entirely relational, defined by her connection to a man and her role within the patrilineal family structure, rather than her individual qualities or aspirations.
And this control extends beyond status, right into controlling femininity and sexuality through strict rules about her body, space, time.
Absolutely. This is driven by that concern for caste purity and boundary maintenance. The vulnerability of a girl between puberty and marriage is seen as needing tight control. Dube mentions a street play, A Girl is Born. That sums up the rules. Do not exceed the boundaries. Be inside the house. Bend your neck downwards. Do not let your eyes wander. It's about containment.
And specific physical demeanor.
Very specific. Walk with soft steps. Long strides are seen as masculine. Avoid jumping or running. Don't sit cross-legged. Don't stand like a man is a common rebuke.
Speaking softly, not being argumentative.
Yes. Avoid abrasive male language. Being loudmouthed might get you called Mari, a malevolent goddess, or a Laki, the opposite of Lakshmi, the goddess of prosperity. It's about being agreeable, non-threatening.
And caution around men is taught through metaphors, hay and fire.
Yes, implying physical distance is crucial because temptation is inherent. Or the thorn on the petal, the woman, the petal always gets hurt. And the earthen pot versus the metal vessel analogy is powerful. The woman, earthen pot, gets polluted easily and permanently by inappropriate contact, while the man, metal vessel, can supposedly be cleaned.
So avoiding the image of a prostitute means?
No whistling, no jingling bangles loudly, no smiling without purpose, no looking around furtively. Shyness and modesty are presented as natural, essential qualities.
And physical appearance becomes a major factor for marriage.
Hugely important. Good looks are often considered a key qualification for a girl. Historically, Dube notes, women were even restricted from things like chewing betel nut publicly, having loose hair, looking in a mirror after sunset, or wearing bright clothes, as these were associated with loose morals. And tragically, blame for harassment, for eve-teasing, is often shifted onto the girl's behavior or dress.
This control also extends very concretely to space and time. Return before dark. Who are you going with?
Yes, constant monitoring. This leads to girls often moving in clusters, as the scholar Krishna Kumar observed. He said, girls are not individuals in the way they navigate public space. They're a group needing protection.
And within the house, post-pubertal girls are pushed into more private, secluded areas.
Often, yes, into the secluded private domain. This has real-world consequences. Dube points out, like higher school dropout rates for girls around puberty in both rural and urban areas. It also impacts their choices for higher education or careers, maybe avoiding co-ed institutions or jobs with late hours because of these ingrained ideas about safety and propriety.
You mentioned an example from a school in Kolhapur.
Right. Dube observed girls sitting separately, being very shy, while the boys were confident. The teacher seemed to just accept the girl's shyness as normal. It shows how home and school work together, reinforcing these gender roles.
So how do all these deeply ingrained expectations about a girl's body, her movements, her presence in public versus private spaces, how do they shape her sense of freedom, her identity, her ability to just be?
They fundamentally restrict her freedom and shape her identity through this lens of protection, control, and societal expectation. It often leads to a diminished sense of personal power, where her value is judged by how well she conforms, rather than by her own unique potential or desires.
Okay, this is fascinating, but also quite heavy. Now here's where it gets really interesting and shows just how adaptable cultures can be. Let's pivot to Dube's other major study. This one is Matrilineal and Islam, Religion and Society in the Laccadives. It was a collaboration with Abdul Rahman Khudi. And it explores this incredible paradox, how matrilineal, where family lines and property traced through the mother, manages to coexist with a patrilineal religion, Islam.
Exactly. The setting is Kelpeni, a tiny island in the Laccadive group, now Lakshadweep. The people there are descendants of Hindus from Kerala who converted to Islam centuries ago, but they kept aspects of their old social structure. Property, especially important property like coconut trees, maybe 90% of them, is owned by matrilineal groups called derived.
So the group identity comes from the mother's side.
Yes. While the oldest male often acts as the manager, the fundamental structural unit is matrilineal. And another unique thing, marriages are often duolocal.
Duolocal, meaning?
Meaning spouses tend to live separately. The wife stays in her derived home and the husband visits her there. They don't form a new household in the way we might expect.
But despite this unique social setup, Islam is central to their lives.
Very much so. They're devout Muslims, following the Shafi school of law. They have mosques, observe daily prayers, fasting during Ramadan, make the pilgrimage to Mecca. All the major life events, circumcision, marriage ceremonies, follow Islamic forms.
So what was the central puzzle Dube explored?
The core problem was this. Islam, as Dube puts it, implicitly and explicitly assumes a specific relationship between the sexes in which the male is the source of authority.
Okay.
So how does this powerful, typically male-oriented religion interact with a female-centered system of social organization, like their matrilineal? Seems like a direct contradiction, right?
Yeah, it really does. So what specific questions did Dube ask? How do they make it work?
She asked things like, how does a father exercise authority over his children if they don't live with him? How do they handle Islamic inheritance rules, which favor the male line when property is traditionally matrilineal? And how is Islamic divorce, usually initiated by the man, modified in this context?
And what did they find? What were the accommodations?
The accommodations are really ingenious, a practical blend. The father does have an important emotional role with his children. He pays for certain ceremonies, like their entry into life rituals, but the closest, most fundamental kinship ties are definitely between the mother and her children. And interestingly, the primary authority for punishing children rests with the grandmother, the mother's mother.
The grandmother, not the father or even the mother.
Often the grandmother, as the senior woman in that matrilineal line. The oldest woman in a derived generally enjoys special status, even if a male relative acts as the day-to-day household head or manager. And here's the key compromise on property. The important ancestral derived property continues to follow matrilineal rules. It stays within the mother's line. Only personal property, things someone earns outside that traditional system, follows Islamic inheritance rules, passing through the male line.
So they compartmentalize it. Traditional property stays matrilineal. Personal earnings follow Islam.
Exactly. It's a pragmatic way to honor both systems where they matter most.
So what does this unique case of Kalpani teach us about how different cultural and religious systems can adapt and blend, even when their core principles seem so different? What's the lesson here?
I think it teaches us that cultural systems are incredibly flexible, practical, and resilient. They aren't rigid monoliths. Societies find really ingenious ways to integrate seemingly contradictory ideas, negotiating compromises that allow them to maintain their identity while adapting to new influences. It shows culture is dynamic, it's lived, it's constantly being negotiated.
That's a fantastic point. Okay, let's shift focus one last time, back to the process of training girls, the everyday stuff. How are girls taught feminine tasks? Dube found a general pattern, right?
Yes, while there's diversity across India, she found a pretty consistent pattern where women and girls are primarily responsible for kitchen work, cleaning, fetching water, and childcare. She shares an interesting example from a survey of parents at a quite high-class school in New Delhi. Even there, clear biases showed up. Parents expected girls to help with kitchen work, sweeping, washing clothes, dusting. Boys, they were expected to fetch things from the market, maybe help fix the car. It shows these deep-rooted ideas regarding the gender-based division of work persist even in modern urban settings.
And this training starts young, through play. Dolls, playing house.
Exactly. Games involving dolls, household, kitchen work, and baby subtly steer girls towards these roles. They learn by actively assisting mothers and older women in cooking, serving food, caring for younger siblings, preparing items for worship, looking after elderly relatives.
Washing clothes is seen as inherently feminine.
Very much so. And Dube notes it's even considered improper if a broom accidentally touches a male family member. These small things reinforce the division.
And this division is presented as just natural.
Completely natural. That's the key. A girl who dislikes these feminine tasks is often told she simply cannot escape it. It's her destiny. But a boy who enjoys something considered feminine, like maybe embroidery or cooking, he faces teasing, ridicule. He might be called womanish or effeminate. The boundaries are policed for both genders.
And there's this concept of a sense of service, that girls are taught, especially related to food.
Yes, Sewa is seen as a crucial quality for girls. It's taught through practices like learning to eat leftovers framed as a lesson in adjustment and self-restraint. If a girl cries for food, she might be called fussy. Girls are specifically instructed, for instance, not to serve burnt rice or rice with tiny pebbles to male members of the family. It's about putting others' comfort first.
And this prepares them for the in-laws' house, bearing hardship.
Yes, these small daily lessons in bearing pain and deprivation are seen as preparation for the potential difficulties and adjustments required after marriage, particularly in dealing with the mother-in-law.
This connects to the Annapurna ideal, the goddess of food.
Exactly. Annapurna is the unfailing supplier of food. This ideal can provide women with a sense of self-esteem and importance within the family. They are the nurturers. But it also reinforces the feminine character as being defined by sacrifice, by always putting others' needs before her own.
And there are even different ideas about male and female bodies and food.
Yes. Boys are often given more or better food to make them strong. That's seen as a matter of pride for the family. Girls, conversely, are sometimes said dismissively to grow like a refuse heap. Their food intake might be monitored or controlled, especially around puberty. Why? Because visibly developed body can raise those anxieties about containment of her sexuality.
Wow. There's a lot going on there.
And Dube highlights this real ambiguity in girls' training. They're rigorously trained for these domestic and nurturing roles, but they're simultaneously being prepared to leave their home, to enter an unfamiliar setting, and face an uncertain future in their husband's house. How do you think this constant awareness of leaving might affect a girl's self-confidence? her willingness to take initiative.
It seems like it would create a constant tension.
It does. There's a contradiction. On one hand, you have these strong, lifelong brother-sister bonds emphasized in some rituals. But on the other hand, there's the pervasive idea that a woman should be like water or pliable mud, expected to completely discard her old loyalties and absorb herself into her husband's family and lineage.
So pulling it all together, how do these deep traditions and everyday expectations from the games they play as children to how meals are served, how do they ultimately shape a girl's understanding of her own value and her future role in the family and society? What's the core message she takes away?
The core message, reinforced constantly, is that her primary value lies in her future role as a wife and mother within a patrilineal system. Her training emphasizes service, sacrifice, adaptability, and the careful management of her sexuality. It systematically shapes her self-worth around fulfilling these roles, rather than, say, individual ambition or self-determination outside of that family structure.
Okay, this has been incredibly insightful. Let's try to synthesize the key takeaways from Leela Dube's work. What are the main points you want people to remember?
Sure. I think there are four main takeaways. First, her pioneering role. She was absolutely critical in dragging gender issues into the mainstream of anthropology and challenging that deep-seated male bias. That's huge. Second, her detailed look at Hindu culture. She meticulously showed the intricate, often subtle, everyday ways gender is constructed through rituals, language, family practices, all emphasizing patrilineal continuity, the control of female sexuality, and the supreme importance of marriage and motherhood. Third, that fascinating Kalpani study. It's a powerful example of cultural flexibility, showing how deeply rooted social systems like matrilineal can adapt and blend even with seemingly contradictory religious influences like Islam. Culture isn't static. And finally, the comprehensive nature of girls' training. It wasn't just about chores. It shaped their entire demeanor, their relationship to space, their life purpose, all oriented towards this ideal of siwa, or sense of service.
So what does this all mean for us? What's Dube's bigger message here?
Dube's broader message, I think, is incredibly important. It's that all these rituals, practices, sayings, things that often appear completely natural, just the way things are, they fundamentally work to structure women as gendered subjects. And they do so within a system that often involves gender asymmetry and, frankly, female subordination. It's about seeing the system behind the natural.
But she didn't just paint women as victims, right?
Absolutely not. And this is crucial. Dube was very careful not to portray women as just passive, unquestioning victims. Instead, she highlighted how, even within these significant limits, women actively engage with their situation. They question their situation, express resentment, use manipulative strategies. Sometimes, sadly, against other women, they turned deprivation and self-denial into sources of power, and they constantly attempt to carve out a living space for themselves.
So there's resilience and agency there, too.
Definitely. It highlights their incredible resilience and their agency, even when operating within very restrictive systems. It's a complex picture.
Okay, that gives us a lot to think about. So here's a final provocative thought for you, our listeners, to take away from this deep dive. As you go about your day-to-day, maybe start noticing the subtle or sometimes maybe not so subtle messages about gender that exist in your own culture, perhaps in your family, maybe in the media you consume at work. What are some of the unspoken rules or expectations that might be shaping you or the people around you? And how might understanding that these things are often constructed rather than just natural help you see things, maybe even yourself, differently?
That's a great question to ponder. Keep exploring. Keep questioning the world around you. And